Hi guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to be with you, to see you all. This is live streaming, one of our regular Fridays that we do and bring you every time live kind of streaming about what I believe is important to talk about, and we try to talk about it very openly and honestly, and we try to discuss things that we believe that make a difference in your life in such a way that inspires you, but also that makes a difference in your life in wherever you are. Today we are going to be talking about loss, bereavement, grieving stages. And I'm so happy that right now, oh my god, it was so easy this time. Hi, Shaz, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm welcoming my friend Shaz Khan, who
Hi,
is a personal
everybody.
development coach, and he also calls him you are also DJ, right?
The
Like
the Uber DJ on Instagram.
Uber DJ, Uber
The Uber
DJ.
DJ.
So
Yes.
so cool. Shaz, can you say something? Just make sure we can hear you well.
Yes. Hi, Lucia. Nice to be on. How is that coming
Oh,
across to you?
we hear you very. Let me see if you guys can just send us a message if you can hear us both well, Shaz and I. In the meantime, I'm just going to introduce Shaz. He is quite extraordinary story about him. We know each other from kind of personal development world, and in this world, people get to know each other inside out quite well. And just quoting from his a little bit of his story, and why we are joining today to talk about grieving, bereavement, and loss in general. Talking about loss, not just losing someone who is close to our heart, but what we also want to talk is about loss of any kind. You know, like it can be loss of unborn child, it can be loss of a love of your life, or divorce. You can really apply it, guys, to anything and everything that is being challenging for you right now in terms of loss. But mainly we will be talking about bereavement and a little bit about Shaz, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a little moment, but I just want to warm up the little soup for you, um, and say that in Shaz's story, he's saying it all changed for him in 2019, where he really didn't know what to do when his life changed so dramatically, um, as he was a driver, and he picked up all sorts of people from all sorts of different places you can imagine, and that as a chauffeur, right, like you get to know a lot of people, a lot of characters, and I believe is very interesting. But also, you need to be skilled in dealing with these people. Tell us, actually, let us tell us your story yourself, because I think it's going to be so much more powerful when you
Yeah.
speak
So thank you
your
very much, Lucy. Let
words.
me start. I'll start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, my mother passed away in 2019, and then my father unfortunately passed away in October 21. So since mum has passed, as being a chauffeur driver, I always have people. It's almost like the big man upstairs always gives me people to speak to, or I always say, there's always a reason why people get into my car, because we can have these quite personal conversations, because again, it's easier to confide and speak to a stranger than it is to have these kind of conversations with family, because I tell them, listen, there's no judgment. So if we want to talk about it, you can do, and I can obviously empathize with what's going on with them, and we kind of have open and honest conversations about how they're feeling, kind of what they're going through. So that's kind of a little bit of why. So what I wanted to kind of do is, once mum passed, and then once dad passed in October 21, was to see how I could possibly have this adversity and to have something positive come out of it. So that's what kind of got me onto researching the 5 stages of grief, and then also of making it a little bit different from your normal kind of books by having riders' stories and also friends from Facebook, their stories into the book. So as and when people read the book, they can obviously relate to anything that's kind of been happening because it's, you know, other people have gone through it as well. So that's like a little summary of kind of what has happened
Mm.
so far.
And your book called Overcoming Your Grief, what is this book about? Can you tell
So
us a little bit?
yeah, so what the book looks like, and there it is, Overcoming Your Grief. Um, it's looking at the 5 stages of grief because a lot of the time we will have a loss either of a friend or a family member, and we just don't know how to cope. The normal way to kind of behave is just to kind of not speak at all, not communicate, and go inwardly. Now, if there's no, like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, like there's no yellow brick road to kind of walk down to see that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, you're in a safe space, you know, just go through the processes to come out at the other end. And the last stage of grief is acceptance of it, and then you accept of, then you kind of accept of what's happened. So, if there was no yellow brick road, if there was
Mm.
no kind of way of going from one end of the initial loss to coming out at the other end, then it's very difficult to then navigate your emotions, what's going on, etc. So that's why I wanted to be almost like holding your hand and just leading you through down that road and telling you, you know, this is exactly where you are at the moment. This is what's coming up. So don't be too afraid.
Yeah, yeah. I was just about to say that reading this kind of book for those who are grieving or in a process of grieving, of losing someone they loved, it can be very comforting and reassuring because a lot of times, you know, you feel alone with it. You a lot of times can't even formulate, you know, with words the kind of feelings you feel, and maybe in some point you are getting into depression or into dark places where you feel lost and alone. And this book can be very, very nice guide, which is actually where you're going to read that is actually very normal. And there are
Yes,
stages, and there's, you know, each stage can be very individual for each person in terms of how long it takes, right? So it's and every relationship, of course, with the person we lost, and it's very specific. So there are no rules, but there are certain rules. That's what I'm hearing, which most people go through, like this bereavement process, which are the stages of grieving, which you know, help you to kind of understand and feel like, okay, I'm feeling angry, and it's okay, or right now
yes.
I'm feeling like it's not fair, and it's also okay. It's very human way to go through these stages and very normal.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that as well, Lucy, it's, you know, a lot of the time the feeling is of being lost, of, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm turning, I'm numb. I can go inwardly, and stories I've been hearing, people will go for the short-term fix, which is either alcohol or tablets or drugs. Now, they have a very short-term fix, but once they wear off, you are left with yourself. So, kind of one of the purposes of the book is to have you working from inside out, and that's of, you know, looking at exactly where you are, communicating what's going on for you at all times. And I think that's the most important takeaway from the book, the C word, communication. And
Mm,
that could be with any family members who also knew the person who'd passed, any friends who also knew the person who passed. But again, you know, we're in a society that, especially here in the UK, is we have that stiff upper lip. You know,
mm,
we don't want to impose ourselves onto our friends, onto other people. We'd rather not share our feelings. And unfortunately, in this kind of stage, especially dealing with bereavement and grief, it's the total opposite of what you actually need to do is to share what's going on for you, is to communicate, however that
mm.
shows up for you.
very, very, very true. I also have a personal experiences of some family members, especially men, seem to withhold emotions rather than communicate them, and it often can turn into depression and anxiety that can carry on actually after uh, because it can turn into traumatic experience when we, exactly like you say, don't communicate it because we are withholding emotions, withholding communication. It can, I mean, this, yeah, it is very important to, but then you need to know who to talk to as well. It's not like random person, because you know, like it's sometimes we meet people and when you speak to, you might get, oh, you know, I know exactly how you feel. It's like, no, actually, mate, you know, like this is very unique situation, and you know, like we all, do you know what is interesting, Shaz? When I was arranging for this interview, I had no idea I will go in for the funeral in between, because I'm dressed in black. You know, my last Tuesday, my uncle died, and I haven't been on a funeral, touch wood, for very long. I mean, probably 25 years, and yet I do the interview with you, and soon, I'm actually going through the. It's interesting how universe works, right? So I had a little bit of practice, I feel like, preparing like live in my personal life for this interview, and not practice, but you know, actual recent experience. And one thing that um, stood up for me in terms of, because I mean, we are not here to give advice, right? We are just here to contribute. We are here to share our stories,
Yes.
and maybe give something away that can make you um, think about things a little bit differently. Because the truth is that when I travel the world, Western culture speaks about death is almost like taboo. Like we
Yes.
don't talk about it until, you know, we reach certain age when it's like really like knocking on a door, and then we are forced to not so much talk about it still, but think about it.
Mm.
But you know, we live lives, most of us, like we are almost like immortal, which is actually a good thing, because you don't want to be thinking about death all the
No.
time, every day. Of course, not in a negative sense, but I like to, you know, traveled in Eastern Asia, and then spending some time in Northern Africa. You know, I realized that culturally people are very, you know, talk about these things as a normal part of life, and it's very refreshing to be able to get to know. And even like in Bali, I went for the 3-day funeral where, you know, it's extraordinary experience, because it tells you a lot about culture, about people, about, you know, the way they think, and more importantly, the way they live their lives. Um, so, you know, it was very humbled experience for me. And what I'm trying to say with this is that with my recent experience on a funeral of my uncle, you know, I went there, and of course it was a sad gathering, and we did share the tears and so on. But actually, you know, my take on it was, you know, I like to think, and not always is possible, because obviously sometimes it's very, very close to your heart, and you're still probably in a stage of shock when you are actually going through the funeral. Like you're still very much in that organization mood, shock, or everything, you know, you have to organize a funeral, a lot of things to do, right, in a short
Yeah.
space of time when something like this happens. So that's additionally very, very challenging. But what I like to say is that this funeral was filled with celebration of my uncle's life. And of course it varies, right? This was an old man who lived his full life, and you know, there was a lot to celebrate
Mm.
in his life. Of course it varies on circumstances, how people pass and on what age and so on. But you know, in this case it was, you know, I said to his relatives, closest relatives, like, well, it's sad moment, but I'm happy to say that, you know, I'm pleased to be on his funeral, because you know, I don't have to lie, I don't have to pretend. He was absolutely genuinely loved man, and was so easy to celebrate his life. And I think, you know, we are talking about death here, but that's maybe the way to uh, live our life, to be
I,
able to.
I think it's very interesting because, again, you know, you speak of the Eastern way and the Western way to deal with bereavement and grief. A lot of the time, it's easier when a little bit easier. It's still very difficult when somebody is ill, and you know, there at some stage there will be a release for them, and they will pass away. But again, from again with speaking to riders in the car and people in general, the most difficult is when a person's not actually ill, and you know they may be, you might be speaking to them one day, and then in a couple of days they may just pass away.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of initial shock to the system
Yes.
where people will go into, oh my god, they sent me a message, why didn't I stay that extra 2 minutes when they asked me to, or why didn't I return the call when they phoned. It's all of the, you know, would have, should have, could have,
The
the
regrets.
regret. And that's one of the difficult thing to kind of get over, is the regret. And that's where people get into, it's almost like being on a hamster wheel, you know, once you're on you can't get off, because the conversation is just going round and round and round in
Mm.
your head, and whatever anybody says to you, it honestly doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most probably difficult situation. You know, I had a little bit of both. My mother was quite ill, so we knew that, you know, there was a certain time that she would pass, and when she did, it was a relief for us also, because you know you never want to see a loved one be in prolonged pain for too long.
Yes.
And when they're ready to kind of let go, they let go. But unfortunately, that's, it's amazing for them, but it's the people that they leave behind, and it's how you as yourself take what has happened and what you make it mean, and then
Mm.
from what you're making it mean, you will, you know, take those kind of certain steps and deal with anger, resentment, depression. All of these things kind of go around as you're kind of making head and tail of, you know, what's actually happened. Now that you've left me like this, what do I do? How can I move forward? And it's just a circle. It just keeps
Mm-hmm.
going round and round and round. So
Yeah,
that's the
because
very, yeah,
yeah,
that's the difficult part.
because I can imagine talking about regrets, about what we should have, could have said, didn't clear up, didn't, you know, even simple "I love you" can be a huge regret if you never said it to your mother for any reason, and you maybe loved her dearly, or you know, but you just weren't able to say it out loud,
Yeah.
or you know, if you hung up the phone in anger about some silly thing. And so, but I can imagine regrets can keep you in a state, in this, stuck in one stage for a prolonged period of time. So how do you deal with these regrets, like if anybody's in that stage and listening?
One of the exercises within the book is to actually communicate that. Now, what do I mean by communicate? Because obviously, the person you want to communicate is no longer there. So the best way to do it is to actually write a letter. Go to a quiet place, write a letter to your loved one on everything you ever wanted to say to them.
Mm.
Now, if you're crying, cry and get it all out of your system. You have to do that. I call it a cleansing of the eyes. So write a letter. Now, once you've written the letter, actually go to another quiet place, but with somebody who also knew that person, and read that letter out. So now, why is that important? Number one, your eyes are seeing what the words are being written, and your hands are writing to it. So it's two motions. And then when you actually speak those words, it's a third part of the release.
Mm.
And you
And
can,
hearing your voice.
and hearing your own voice, however it is, you know, there's no time limit, there's no rush. You communicate it as you communicate it.
When I do this exercise with my clients, also, like, I also ask them to empty everything what is in, was there to be emptied. You know,
Yeah.
matter this person is not here. I do believe there is some kind of connection. I had many people coming to me where they still feel their loved ones, like literally watching over them, standing, like even my hairdresser says to me, like I keep on listening to my brother in challenging or happy moments of my life, and it's just, people would be thinking I'm crazy saying this, but it's my little secret and I'm enjoying it so much that I don't even say it to many people, but I say it to you because I know you understand. By the way, about 3 or 4 messages just flashed on my screen saying thank you so much for bringing this subject up. So
You're very
Shaz, I mean,
welcome.
I think we've done a right thing to do this. I know it's not like happy cheery thing to talk about, but it is part of our lives. And I guess you and I and many people who are watching us are in a similar age, and unfortunately, every period of our lives got its little specifics. We've been in a times, I was just talking about it to my friend the other day, like we had like our 20s 30s where everybody was getting married, and it was like that time where everybody was getting married. Then it was like everybody was having kids, and then everybody got divorced. I'm saying everybody, but you know what I mean. It was this
Yeah.
wave. And now unfortunately we are also entering the stage where a lot of our parents are
Yeah.
passing. Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, like what your listeners are, and I hope this is something for everybody that watches this video and listens to what we're talking about. It's something that, again, it's not a happy thing, because normally you share about happy news, etc., to give people breakthroughs, but it's something that needs to be spoken about, and how to kind of move forward, because it's inevitable. It's inevitable that there is an end of life at some stage for all of us, and to kind of approach it in a very positive manner. And
Yes.
just kind of referring it back to the Eastern philosophy.
Yes.
Imagine if they did that here in the UK and in London. That and as you were saying that, the thought that came into my head: if that person is really coming to the end of their life, why not have a massive party for them, so that they
While
can see all of
they're
their
alive.
friends while they're alive? The music, if they like that, the food, everybody saying, "Oh, amazing to see you," and the
Beautiful.
enjoyment. And then if and when they do pass, they've got that everlasting memory that, what, at that time, all of my friends and family were there, and I absolutely amazed.
Do you know what? I had this idea, and I'm actually doing a similar party to my for my mom in May, June, somewhere there. As we are going to celebrate her birthday, I made for both, together with my brother, for my mom and for my dad. Firstly for my dad, and recently I just finished a documentary film with an interview with my mom
Oh wow.
about her life, about her photos, videos with music. I mean, it's so beautiful. And it's lasting memory for generations to come. And we are going to bring the family together and play the video. So it's not just going to be drinking and boozing and cakes and candles. It's going to be also playing this video, which is, we are going to celebrate my mom's life. And I'm just so pleased, so happy we have this opportunity to do it, because my mom recently has been diagnosed with dementia.
Sorry
And
to
I
hear that.
know that if I'm doing the interview, it wouldn't be even possible to do it now so much. I'm very glad I done it kind of 5 to
Yeah.
12 last year. But she will be able to still this year, I hope, be kind of absorbing the all the vibes and celebration. So absolutely, thumbs up. I do believe that it's very important to celebrate and express our love, our affection, our gratitude to people around us. And also another thing, what I was thinking when you've been talking was like, it's so amazing to, I don't know how it would look like, but have some kind of platform, maybe it exists, where people can be very open about their feelings, about their fears from death, like it's important to talk about it. Like, I know I had a blog, my dad's got the last stages of Parkinson's, and I had a huge blog to talk about the disease for many years until I accepted it.
Mm.
And then I had a huge blog to talk about death, because for me, it was, as a little girl, I used to say, when you will die, I want to die with you, because I don't want to be here when you are not here.
Mm.
I used to say that as a little girl. And when my dad was diagnosed, I was like, that's it, I'm gonna die soon, because we didn't know how long it will take till he gets to final stage. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that it took me a while to be able to openly talk to him about death. But it was an extremely loving process to do this. Difficult, like very challenging for me, for both of us, I think, but maybe more for me, because my dad was already kind of accepting it more than me, and living in it. But it was very healing process, because it gave us a freedom, because until that point there was, although we've been very open about everything else, there was something in between, between us. There was never like, don't touch that, because that's too painful, that would be painful for her, or and once we opened it, we cried, we released emotions. It was
Mm.
hard. It was like I had a big lump in my throat talking about it. But then something like burden dropped off, and we even been able to laugh about it at the end. And then I said to him, because I was after I gave birth, and I said to him, Daddy, just please don't die in winter, because I don't have a black coat, and I have no idea what I would wear, because I'm so big right now. I was like almost 80 kilos then. So we've been
Mm.
able to talk about it. And also it gives a great comfort to it gave him great comfort to know that it will be hard, but I will survive. I will be okay. That he's not going to destroy me, because that was the main concern of
Mhm.
the whole family. Make sense?
As you were saying that, Lucia, what came to my kind of mind was, if we have people listening, and if they would like to kind of share with us, my initial thing was, for them to do a little video of themselves, of kind of what they're going through. Now, if that's a little bit too painful, then something they could do in the comments is actually, when it comes down to writing how they feel, and if they want to share everything in that letter to us in the comments, that could be something that could be a release for them if they choose to. I was just
Yeah,
thinking
I'm just
out loud as an option.
yeah, yeah, please. I mean, thank you for this, because I normally encourage people more often to share with us. We do have already comments. Yana is saying exercising and keeping busy can be beneficial also. Yes, I absolutely agree, Yani, but it's also very important, because I know that sometimes we keep busy just to suppress our feelings. So although part of it is very good, it's also very good to actually take a time off, because if we keep on being busy and exercising, running around, it means the feelings are still there, the pain is still there, it just doesn't have an opportunity to come out freely, and the whole process can be suppressed. It's like, I don't know, if you ever experienced that, when you really really wanted to cry, you started crying, and something happened, you had to stop. It's horrible experience, like when you suppress
Yeah,
that, like it's the very same thing. So as much as I agree with you, I also wanted to mention this.
yeah, no, that's a very important point. Most people will go to being busy because that's the natural thing to do. You soldier on, doesn't matter, it's
Yes.
not going to stop you, but you have to kind of give yourself the freedom to experience and go through the experience of grieving, or the grieving process. You have to, because any kind of suppression, it's just building and building.
Yeah.
And when it pops, it's going to be all of that emotion to come out, and
Mm.
you're going to go from feeling however you are at quite a high because you're keeping busy, to an all-time low. And people will say, well, listen, you were really high, well, what's happened? Well, do you know what, I was so busy in everything I was doing, I didn't really give myself a chance to go through the grieving
Yeah.
process. So allow yourself, with compassion, with love, and with the having your family and friends around you, to grieve. And don't forget, it's at your own pace. There's no time limit. There is no rush. We all experience it in different things. So allow that for yourself.
And don't apologize for tears,
No.
like, you know when I was pregnant and I lost the baby, I was crying on a tube. I was crying on walking down the street. It was coming out, and I was glad, to be honest, because the pain was so big.
Mm.
Um, you know, don't apologize for your tears. You don't have to tell everyone, but sharing definitely helps. And another thing what came to my mind is it's so easy to stop taking care of yourself, because
Very important.
there is the shock of it, and even like basic things like eating and sleeping, becomes challenging, because you don't feel like you want to eat, you can't sleep. And so it's very, very important. Easier said than done, right? But
Yeah,
make sure that, because that can add on to, if that takes
and
time to
that's a very good point, because if you've got people around you, because I also get people and say, listen, I haven't actually experienced grief myself, but I know somebody who has. So you can say, listen, look, I'm here for you, whatever you need. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. But have your friend be the person that helps you get up and go to work, helps you brush your teeth, like the basic things. Go for a shower, eat your food, go for a walk. Don't just spit in the room all dark and just
Mm.
be with you and just yourself in that dark space. You still need to function and have that as someone to be a support structure for you.
Mm.
And
Also,
it's
you go on, Chef.
no, I was just going to say, because that is the most important thing, because we can easily just let go of everything. I can't be bothered. I've got nothing more to live for. They were
Mm.
my rock. They were everything. And now the world is ended, and I just don't know what to do. It's
Why
very
it happened
easy to go
to
down
me
that
is
rabbit hole.
unfair. Yes.
You get all of
And
those emotions. Why him? He was this. They were that.
yeah.
Why? And it's all of this kind of thing. So you have to still do the basic things, but always allow yourself a time. And I love the crying bit I was sharing with you before we came on live. It's a cleansing of the eyes.
Mm.
You kind of have to just, it's a release. So just let go. And like I say, don't be ashamed of it, whether you're
Mm.
in Slovakia, Poland, or even in the Western world. Like you say, it's a big taboo subject. It doesn't matter. This is your person. This is your grief, and you have to do it for yourself.
Mm. You I sometimes, many times, I mean, even like recently, what happened in Turkey, right? Like you've seen those live videos of poor people who lost their loved ones, and somehow in other parts, I'm talking other than Western world, parts of the world, people allow themselves to cry, like it's almost like roaring, that kind of animal cry emotion, like very different to UK. Right? No, sorry,
Yeah,
UK people, I'm using UK as an example, but um it's it's healthy. It sounds awful maybe because it's raw.
yeah,
It's raw, but I think when I hear that kind of crying, um especially women, right, like
yes,
wow, like they are almost like screaming, right? But it's raw, and I think it's very, very necessary. Any kind of suppressed emotion, especially such a strong emotion, like probably one of the strongest, the losing one of the closest people to, whether it's husband, son, daughter,
yeah,
like it needs to go out. Otherwise, it, we suppress it not just on a emotional, energetical level, but I had a I was talking to my friend yesterday also on a physical level, like what is causing all the, cancers and all this stuff. It's not just pollution in the air and stress. It's all the suppressed crap that we're holding inside us. I'm absolutely sure of it, and science now confirms that too.
yeah. It's very interesting, because there's two elements. That's when you were trying to swallow what's happened, and that's where the cancer develops in the throat, and the cancer of
Yeah.
the stomach is actually stomaching what's happened. So it's very, very important, not only from an emotional standpoint, the freedom to go through the grieving process and get everything out, whether it's verbally, whether it's crying, but it's very, very important. And women, you guys are amazing at doing that, Us guys, not so much. So it's
Yes,
something that
yes. Yes, I think as a women week ago we had exactly conversation about this, celebrating our International Women's Day. But to be honest, I'm in a most compassionate way, very sorry for boys. And if I ever have a, have a chance to have a son, one sentence I will never ever tell him: boys don't cry. Because I think that, and I'm not saying that, of course, like, man needs to be a man, but like my husband, I saw him cry, and it doesn't make him any less of a man. In fact, like, it made
absolutely.
him, phenomenally strong in my eyes, being able to be this vulnerable. And he cried, when he was told his sister's got a 10 days to go, like, so, yeah, like, the society, the perception of the tears, the crying, vulnerability, like this thing. I'm big ambassador for emotions being for us to be able to express emotions more freely, and for us to, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this as well, is to talk about things authentically, about things that matter, to
Mm.
allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to show who we are, because that way we learn from each other. If we keep the face, like poker face on, and pretend how we have it all handled and at all times, we are not going to learn anything. In fact, it's going to screw us all up, because we all believe that shit. But no, like, nobody's got it completely figured out. Nobody's got it all sorted
Yeah.
inside. I don't know one person in the world, whether it's coach or therapist, even like these people, including me,
Mm-hmm.
we all have our stuff. And so it's very important to be as real, and looking for that, what it means to be authentic for ourselves first, and then
Yeah, and
uh,
especially you touched on being a man, and especially here in the Western culture and in the UK, it's it's almost like you don't show emotion, you keep everything to yourself, and that is number one, that is not very healthy, and it won't ease the grieving process. Now, if people say all sorts of stuff. Oh, Shaz's father passed, and he didn't cry, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, and again, that's not authentically true. But if you're not showing your vulnerable side, if you're not allowing yourself to go through the grieving process, it doesn't really bode well. And that's why, again, people, they get onto like antidepressants or drugs or things that subdue you thinking about, and almost like it numbs you. And
presses, yeah, even more.
yeah, and you're going to be on those tablets forever, because again, you're looking for a quick fix.
Yeah.
Now, quick fixes are only quick, and then they go back. Then you are left with yourself, and it's that quick fix back to myself, quick fix back to myself. Now, allowing yourself to work through, speak about your grief, it will ultimately lead you to such an amazing and freeing space, that when you do speak about your loved one, because you never lose the memories, you never lose the teachings that they taught you while you were watching them as you were growing up as a child, you never lose that. It's just the physicality,
Yeah.
the hugging, the kissing, the teasing, just being in the same room with them,
Voice,
all of
smell.
all of the senses. That's the only thing that is not here. The rest is all still here.
I remember our grandmother used to live with us for the last couple of years before she passed, and she passed in my mom's bed with my dad holding her head and hand. And I remember it very vividly, because paramedics came. I was 9 years old, and I was in a kitchen and hearing, like how the beeps of the heart. And then I heard beep, and I knew already in that age, I was pretty sure what it means. And I knew. And I remember, the next day, what I was missing the most, and it shocked me how much I predicted it's going to be there, like a normal thing. Every time when I came home, she was, old, and she was like shuffling these slippers throughout the kitchen. It was this shuffling,
Hmm.
slipper shuffling noise. And it's such a
Yeah.
silly thing to miss, right? But you missed that. I missed, you know, telling her to close the doors on the toilet because she always left them open. And do you know what? I was laughing because I do that now.
Yeah.
Isn't this like, or other day I amused myself how how many forms of remembrance subconsciously, like the mark people leave on you. Like I'm
Yes.
this person, like, you know, always like to have my kitchen desk, kitchen table clean. And I just remember, it's like, oh my god, that was my grandma, you know, like she always, like, whatever mess could have been somewhere else but not on a kitchen table. And
Not on
I
the kitchen
picked it
table.
out. I do it. I didn't even realize I'm doing it, you know.
Yeah. There
And
will be
that's
things.
because of her.
There will be things like this where, like you say, it's the senses, the touch, the smell, the hearing of the voice, little things like you say, leaving the door open to the kitchen, for example, um, making sure all the doors are closed all the time so the room is kept warm. You never lose those things. You never lose
And
those things. And
also
that,
what surprised you, like what came from you, because they've been in your presence and they've been your role models, and you picked up the things you didn't even realize you picked up, you know, the way you speak, the mannerisms, they live through us, and they never, and our children
yeah,
and grandchildren, you know, it just continues. Like, these people will never die. They are truly immortal. And that's what helps me to deal with the whole grieving process, and hopefully it will help me in the future with my parents as well, because they live through our hearts. I just want to read one comment. Nina is saying, one of the most difficult part for me to even start the grief was that as much as I was close with my mom, I couldn't come to see her, hug her, kiss her, to come home when she felt sick, and not be allowed to come for her funeral. My siblings were there with her. I was here alone. Yes, my husband was with me, but that was not the same. What would you say on that?
I would say that is very difficult, and unfortunately, you can't go back to kind of rectify that. But it depends now, Nina, on what you're left with. What are your feelings towards it? Is there? I assert there's probably some anger there. Some frustration. Everybody else was there, but you weren't. You being a child. So one of the things you could do is just quantify that in words in a letter.
Yes.
I think that's probably the only thing I can probably kind of suggest as a way to come with it. Else, if you don't, you're always going to have that in the back of your mind. Oh yeah, everybody else was there, but I wasn't. So
Mm.
it's the blame game. You're kind of blaming. There's blame in the area that everybody else was there, but I wasn't.
Mm. She's
So
saying it was 2 years. It was 2 years now. I still haven't been home. There are still times when I find myself sitting quietly, just looking out, not thinking about anything in the bus, and then I realize there are tears coming down my face.
one thing I would suggest, if she hasn't,
Lockdowns. It was because of lockdown, I think. She's saying I'm
right,
angry with government. Yeah.
okay,
Mm.
um, it's very difficult because that's not in our control. Now, the
Mm.
one thing that is in your control is your anger towards it.
Mm.
Now, if
Yep.
it may help, you can go home to wherever Nina's family home is, and just meet up with the brothers, speak about everything, get it off your chest, because it has to be going. The longer you leave it, the more you don't go, you're going to get this, and you're just going to get frustrated, and there'll be more anger, more
It's like
frustration, and
hanging
more anger.
over you, because Nina said that she still haven't been at home. So I
Yeah,
think it's like hovering over you.
yeah. Book that ticket, Nina.
But that, yeah, absolutely, Nina. Nina is my friend as well. I would say the same. It's challenging, and exactly like Jess said, is the more you prolong it, the harder it takes. more courage it takes to do it. And I know it's a brave thing to do, but the payoff, the positive payoff, is going to be great release. And
Yes.
maybe even write that letter before you book that ticket,
Yeah, and
or before, like get it all out there, like clarify your feelings, your whole feelings around it before you go there, before you communicate
it,
it to others.
and if Nina hasn't communicated it to her brothers, maybe if they're all in a family WhatsApp group, just write everything there and then just send it to them before she goes. So because they need to understand what's kind of going on for
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
So that may help also.
Yeah, and then give them opportunity to say whatever they felt, her
Yeah.
not being there, and give them opportunity
Yes.
to also speak out their truth. And you never know, like maybe this is going to be this is opportunity and chance for the very new beginning for the whole your
For the whole
family.
family.
So thank you for sharing with us, and I'm sure you are not alone. Like
Thank you, Nina.
yeah, thank you so much for being so open with us. And yeah, I mean, another thing that came to my mind, Shaz, is that we need to bear in mind that grief is so unpredictable, right?
Yes.
Like we are all, it's different circumstances, we are all different personalities, we all cope with grief in a very, very different way. And so what is normal? There is no rules. You need to grant yourself being a human being. And human being means um, all sorts of things, including acting unpredictably,
Yeah.
including being angry and saying things you didn't want to say, and then maybe have an opportunity to apologize for it if you choose to do so. It's never is no set rules. I mean, I don't think I think people understand, when we are angry, as long as we are able to then catch ourselves and communicate and say it very
In
openly and
in
honestly.
in
Yeah,
in an ideal world, yes. But when it comes to the emotions of grief, there is no of saying it coherently or in a way that makes sense. One of these lovely videos I saw is a father and a child. Now the child is having the worst tantrum you've ever seen. The father just sits there, lets him have all the tantrum, be angry, hitting the wall, hitting his dad, coming in, and all his dad does, bless him, is just hug him. And sometimes we need a person like that to just be with us, to be everything, not judge, just be there. And when we're ready, they can hug us. And sometimes
mm,
that's all it takes,
mm,
and as you said, there is no grieving formula. But what we do know is if there's anything on your mind, talk about it,
yeah,
whatever it might be. It's not silly, it's not absurd, but you need to communicate.
yeah.
You need to communicate, irrespective of how you're feeling, because it's not about your thoughts and feelings. You just need to verbalize it.
And being patient and compassionate with yourself is a big thing, I think, also.
These are the main ones: compassion and love and time, because they
Yeah,
always say time is a healer.
yeah. Also, I would like to bring up very briefly, like, how do we help the friend who just lost son, daughter, like the severe loss I'm talking. And the reason why I'm asking this is that I came across several occasions where, people said to me, yeah, my sister lost, her son, and, I'm scared to call her. I know I have to do it, but I'm scared to call her because I don't know what to say. Like, how best we can support people in this kind of situation.
The easiest way, if we look at the analogy of the father and the son, as we were
Mm.
just speaking about the tantrum,
Mm.
and again, it's very difficult because when it comes to family, you never quite know. You know what you want to say, but you don't know how to kind of maneuver to say it. What I would suggest is just pick up the phone. However long it's going to take, just pick the phone up and say, listen, Lucia, say, for example, if you're my sister,
Mm.
Lucia, darling, I know what you've gone through with your friend. If ever you want to talk about it, I am here. physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever you want to do. If you want to vent, if you want to get frustrated, know that you have someone that is here for you.
And it's safe, you know, let them know it's safe to call you, and you are not going
Yes,
to judge them, and you are here, and you're really, really
correct.
here, and mean it. Because a lot of
Yes,
times these things are being said, but it's like, especially in England, sorry guys, it's like this polite thing, like, I'm here for you, darling. But no,
yeah,
like, really mean it. Like,
yeah,
listen, you know, you want to scream, pick up the fucking phone. I'm
yeah,
here. I will handle it, you know, like that, like
yeah.
really from your gut. I
That's right.
think that's
And
what we
and,
can.
and and you have to be totally 100% honest about that. And like you say, in the Western culture, we'll say that, listen, mate, no worries. If ever you need anything, call us. But like you say, 100% mean it, because you could be the change for that person, from them having an absolutely negative effect to an amazing positive effect.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Lubita is sending us a message. Recently, big help with loss was a look at the person core values and be grateful for her love and living the life in her own true. Thank you. Beautiful.
Amazing. Beautiful,
Beautiful.
buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca, for sharing that with us. And, you know, vice versa. You know, like I know people who died kind of by over drinking themselves or drugging themselves to death, literally. And again, there is always a message we can, or something we can take from there. And always it's like value of time,
Yeah, it's your
our
value of
preciousness
time
and urgency.
and urgency. But also, if you have friends like that and you can see that they're either not calling you, you haven't seen them for a while, you can see them whenever you do see them, they're drinking a little bit more, just that's your friend. Just reach out and say, listen, mate, are you okay? Is everything all right?
Mm,
Just that little conversation,
mm,
again, could be the difference with your friend being alive and not here. It's
absolutely.
sometimes it's that serious. So just always be aware, keep your eyes open, that if you see a sudden change in behavior, they may not vocalize it, but ask them,
Yeah.
are they okay?
Thank
Is
you.
everything all right?
Thank you for saying that. And again, mean it and go into conversation. Don't just
Yeah,
settle
this is
for
this is
I'm all right.
your friend. This is your friend, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you would do that for your friend, and you would expect your friend to do that for you. That's what friendship is about.
You know, we've been on one of the programs together, and landmark programs together. And I remember during my ILP, I was making calls, and I called one of my friends, and she picked up the phone, and she said, "You're the first one I picked up the phone to after 5 months." Um, she was then in psychiatric hospital, and she said, I slashed my wrists, and actually so much that she um, till this moment she can't really use her hand properly, left hand. um, so she was committed to die. It wasn't just I'm going to try if I can scare some people. No, she was like really committed to go. And it was shocking for me. It was shocking for me. And I shared, like, I got such a urgency after the phone call to reach out to people, to make a difference, to whoever I can make a difference. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. I said to you before the stream, you never know who's going to listen. We will never find out who are listening this. And
No,
maybe just one sentence, maybe someone click us on this streaming, and they will hear just one sentence, and maybe it will be just that sentence they need to hear right now
yeah,
for whatever
a
they
lot.
are dealing with, because we have no idea what's going on with people's lives behind the curtains.
I was
Someone
just
might be thinking,
I was just going to say this, exactly the same thing. You never know what's going on for anybody. If you're regularly speaking to a person every other day, and suddenly they don't call, and it's been a week, reach out. Dude, are you okay? I haven't heard from you. Is everything all right? And just for you reaching out
mm,
could be the catalyst for them to actually open up and say, do you know what? Thank you so for reaching out. This is what's been going on for me, and it makes such an amazing difference.
yeah, I met my friend after 8 months yesterday. We had an amazing time. And very, very special time. Like we both been sending messages to each other 5 in the morning saying, oh my God, let's not make it last this long. But you know what got present to? I got present to the fact that a lot of times I'm reaching out to people whenever I can, have the capacity to. And, sometimes, like with everyone, sometimes they don't respond, they don't reply, or, they're, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're just busy, but you don't know what's going on. But,
No,
so many times I hear other people saying, oh, well, I can't be bothered to, call him. He never calls me, or she never calls me. I tried so many times. And we make it personal, this thing of calling
absolutely.
back.
Yeah,
But what if it's not personal? It's actually nothing to do with you. It's the place where people are themselves.
yeah.
They might be depressed. If you're depressed, or if you feel shit about your body, or you just lost the job and you don't feel like reaching out to people, you
No, you
probably
don't.
don't feel like picking up the phone. So, just like you're saying, Shaz, like, don't make it personal. Like, I'm not saying like bug people every day, to give them a call, but let's make sure we take care of each other, because
Absolutely.
you never know. Might be late if we
Yeah,
don't.
exactly.
Yeah. And then in terms of bereavement and grieving process, very practical thing, just to remind as we are coming to the end and wrapping this up, it's, don't hesitate to reach out for professional help as well. There's
Very
absolutely
important.
no shame, no harm. These days, therapists, counselors, professionals who are trained to deal even like specifically with bereavement. I'm not trained specifically for bereavement, but they're phenomenal people who can really support you, help. I'm sure Shaz would be one of them. um Reach out. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Maybe like 1, 2, 3 sessions will be enough for you, maybe not. Maybe
Yeah,
you'll find out that it's actually so beneficial, that is really worth the pennies, and is the best thing you ever done in your life, because you can breathe now. You
yeah.
can breathe more freely. You're able to move on with your life. And ideally, any kind of situation like this, I would like people to actually, because it was so challenging, difficult, painful, all the, I would like it to my daughters are coming. I would like it to be, the springboard for the rest of your life, in terms of, you know and what I mean by this is that, you know let's give example, like, if your mom is the one you lost, and you had a beautiful relationship, no doubt she loved you, or the best way she possibly could have loved you, and she showed you her love in her own specific way. She did love you, because it's moms always do, right? Like, what's the best way to, you know to honor her life? Well, maybe the best
The
way
best.
is to, yeah, it was a kind of like rhetorical question, but I think as a mother now myself, well, what do we want our children? We want our children to be happy. So maybe
Yeah,
the best way to honor lives of the people who we lost is to actually take care of our own needs and happiness, and
yeah.
shining the light. Yeah.
And normally as a parent, you would do that through your children. You would remember how you was a child and what mum used to tell you about, Lucia, don't go out into the road, it's very dangerous, do that. Instinctively, you'll do that for your children. Now, that is a great way. And then also talk about the person, if it's your parents or your grandparents and stuff, to your children about them, because so then they will have a memory. Now, what you've done with your grandmother with doing the video, that video will always be there. Your daughters will see that when they're old enough to understand. Their daughters will be, their daughters will see that, and it just gets, kind of put through like generation to generation. But the best way to honor them is, live the life how your parents would want you to live. From the things that you would remember, they would say, listen, Lucia, be an
Mm.
honest, responsible person, be true to yourself, always be honest, no BS, don't tell lies, da 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 da. That, all of those things that your parents would have told you, that's the best
Mm.
way to honor them. because you're taking that upon yourself. And if you are a mother like yourself or have a family, you know, you'll instill those qualities into them, and it just gets passed down generation to generation.
Yeah, and not always is a rule. Like somebody's parent, like you had a wonderful mom, but you know, some parents maybe would be telling you, no, you have to be a lawyer because you need a safe job, but you really want to be an artist. So we don't mean it literally, right? Like
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
what Chess means, like all the good stuff, right? And
yes.
those things that they didn't do so well, maybe because not every parent was, obviously, you know, we are all different. Maybe, you know, take it as a little bit of lesson for us, like warning signs, like, okay, so if I would continue copying my mom, living my life this way, I would probably end up, you know, and I don't want really that for my future, that kind of thing. So we it's up to us what we choose to, you know, carry on or learn from our parents and from our loved ones. And I guess so that's why I said in general the best way to honor the people we loved is to find our own version of happiness, satisfaction in life,
Yeah.
and that kind of internal, you know, joy. So we spend that time we have. That's why I was talking about urgency, you know, like I'm talking about urgency in, you know, fulfilling our dreams,
Mm.
you know. And that's what actually happened. For example, my husband, right? Like he when he lost his sister, that was like a twin to him, you know, that there was suddenly this urgency to, you know, stop like putting things on hold that really matters, like having a family, like, you know, like all those things. He used to say, okay, you know, like when I'm ready,
Hmm.
whenever that will be, which would be probably never, you know. He was like, you know, is that's a great thing about, because you realize the how temporary this life really is, and you just sometimes you just need to go like, fuck yeah, just go for it, you know. And that's the healthy way of saying yes to life.
Yeah. And like you say, you know, you'll take the good points from the relationship, from those qualities, and you know, and if you were pressured as a child, like in the Asian culture, it's, you know, there was three or four things: doctor, accountant, engineer. And if you're not one of them, then there was like this, and they put strict pressure on you. But do you know what? It may have kept you focused to then find out what you do love,
Yeah.
and really be laser focused in getting that. So something like that you can take on and then pass down.
Yeah. One question: how do you know you? Because my battery is running out, and I really need to click finish before it runs out, because we'll lose this streaming. But very quick question before we part: how do you know you accept it? You are in the stage of acceptance now.
Again, this is different from person to person. For me, it's when I can actually talk about my parents and I'm not crying. That's just for me personally.
Uh-huh.
That I can have a smile on my face. I can speak to them in a light which, you know, as I talk about them, it makes me smile, it makes me happy, and then I remember the things. That is probably one of the indicators
Mm-hmm.
that you've actually reached a level of acceptance
So
for
you are
yourself.
able
And
to speak about it freely.
absolutely freely, with, you know, with no
Gratitude.
remorse, no regret, with gratitude, with love, with compassion, with
Mm,
happiness. That's the probably the first indicator.
mm, beautiful. And Shaz, tell us where we can find your book.
What I will do is in your stream, I will put the link to the book, or I think you've got it on your phone. I sent it to you on Messenger.
Yes, yes.
If you want to copy
I can share
and
it.
paste
Yeah.
that into that, yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. And like I say, guys, you know, this is an opportunity for yourselves to kind of overcome, as the title says, overcoming your grief, but in a way that, you know, you're left happy, you're left not with no regrets, with no remorse, with no anger, but so much more freedom to just be the amazing human beings that all of you guys are.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That, I think I wanted to say any final words, but I think that's perfect. Shaz, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy
You,
man. good
You're
luck
very
with
welcome.
your next book. I'm sure there will be more coming from you.
Yes,
And thank you all guys for watching, for listening. Keep on sending us comments. I know most of you are
absolutely.
watching us from the replay. If you don't feel like sharing on a in a comment, send us a personal messages. If there's any way we can support you, we are here for you.
Absolutely
Please,
amazing.
please remember that.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
guys.
thank you. Bye, bye for now.
Bye bye.
Lots of love to you all.
Cheers. Bye bye.